My brother walked into that investor meeting with my laptop bag, the exact same Toomey briefcase I bought specifically for my pitch deck because it had the reinforced compartment for electronics. I know because I watched him through the coffee shop window across the street, and my stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to be sick right there on the sidewalk. Want to hear more stories like this? Subscribe. Let me back up 18 months. 18 months of 16-hour days. 18 months of maxing out 3 credit cards. 18 months of my girlfriend leaving me because I, quote, cared more about some stupid app than our relationship. That stupid app was going to change how small businesses manage their inventory using artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. Sounds fancy, but really it was just smart software that could tell a coffee shop owner they were going to run out of oat milk next Tuesday based on weather patterns, local events, and historical sales data. I know that sounds specific, and that's because I spent 8 months just researching coffee shops alone. I sat in 47 different cafes across 3 states. I interviewed 213 small business owners. I filled up 11 notebooks with handwritten observations because I'm old school like that. My apartment looked like a conspiracy theorist lived there, with papers pinned to every wall, red string connecting different ideas, sticky notes covering my bathroom mirror with random thoughts I had at 3 in the morning. The technical side took even longer. I taught myself Python programming through YouTube videos. I burned through tutorial after tutorial, crashed my computer 6 times, and once accidentally deleted 3 weeks of work because I didn't understand version control. I cried that night. Like actually sat on my kitchen floor and cried. But I rebuilt it. Made it better actually. My family thought I was losing my mind. My mom kept calling asking when I was going to get a real job. My dad would send me Indeed links for accounting positions. And my brother Derek? Derek would come over to my apartment, eat my food, and listen to me ramble about machine learning algorithms and market penetration strategies. Derek always seemed so interested. He would ask questions. Good questions too. Like how did I plan to handle data security? What was my customer acquisition cost? How was I going to compete with bigger companies that had actual funding? I thought he was just being a supportive older brother. I thought he actually cared about what I was building. We had this tradition in our family. Every Thanksgiving, everyone had to share what they were grateful for and what they were working toward. Super corny, I know, but my mom insisted on it. Last Thanksgiving, I brought my laptop. I gave everyone the full presentation. 43 slides. Mock-ups of the interface. Projected revenue streams. Letters of intent from 6 businesses that wanted to beta test the software. My aunt fell asleep during slide 22. My cousin spent the whole time on his phone. But Derek? Derek recorded the whole thing on his phone. He said he wanted to show his business school friends because it was such a great example of a solid pitch deck. He said I should be proud of the work I had done. He hugged me after and told me he believed in me. I should have known something was wrong when he started asking for my files. He said he wanted to use my business plan as a template for a class project. Could he get a copy of my financial projections? Just to see how I formatted everything. Could he see my technical documentation? He was curious about the architecture. Could he get the contact information for those beta testing businesses? He wanted to interview entrepreneurs for a paper he was writing. I gave him everything. Because he was my brother. Because I trusted him. Because when you spend 18 months working alone in your apartment, surviving on ramen and coffee, you get excited when someone actually seems to care about your work. 3 months ago, I finally got my meeting with Riverside Ventures. It took me 9 months just to get their attention. I cold emailed them 68 times. I showed up at 2 conferences where I knew their partners would be speaking. I networded so hard I felt like a used car salesman. But I got the meeting. December 18th, 10 in the morning. I had been practicing my pitch every single day for 3 months. Then 2 weeks ago, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because I get so many spam calls. But something told me to pick up. It was Marcus Chun from Riverside Ventures. He said he appreciated my persistence and my passion for the project. But they had just been approached by another entrepreneur with a very similar concept. He wanted to give me a heads up out of professional courtesy. They were meeting with this other founder on November 27th. If I wanted to still pitch on December 18th, I was welcome to, but he thought I should know they might have already made a decision by then. My hands started shaking. November 27th was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks before my scheduled meeting. I asked Marcus who this other entrepreneur was. He said Derek Morrison. My brother. My own brother had scheduled an investor meeting for my idea 3 weeks before mine. I sat there on my couch staring at my wall of research, and I felt something break inside me. Not sadness, not even anger at first. Just this cold, empty feeling like someone had scooped out my insides with a spoon. Then the anger came. I punched a hole in my drywall, broke 2 knuckles, had to ice my hand for an hour before I could think straight again. But then I started thinking like an entrepreneur, like someone who had spent 18 months solving problems. This was just another problem, a bigger problem, a more personal problem, but still just a problem that needed a solution. I opened my laptop and started gathering evidence. Every single email I had ever sent about the project, screenshots of every conversation, photos of my notebooks with dates visible, my GitHub repository showing every commit with timestamps, my Amazon purchase history showing when I bought books on machine learning and business strategy, credit card statements showing payments to my developer tools and software subscriptions, calendar invites for every interview I conducted with business owners. I had 18 months of documentation. Derek had 3 months at most. I could prove this was mine, but I needed more. I needed to understand what Derek actually knew about the technical side. So I did something kind of sneaky. I called him. I pretended everything was fine. I said I was stuck on a technical problem with the recommendation algorithm, and could he help me think through it? He had no idea what I was talking about. He tried to use buzzwords. He said something about neural networks and cloud computing. Basic stuff anyone could learn from a single article. He had no depth, no real understanding. He had my presentation, but he didn't have my knowledge. That's when I realized he was going to fail even without my interference. But I wasn't going to leave it to chance. I reached out to Marcus Chin directly. I didn't accuse Derek of anything. I simply asked if I could meet before November 27th. I said I had some additional materials I wanted to share that demonstrated the depth of research behind my concept. I said I understood they were meeting with another founder about a similar idea, and I thought it would be valuable for them to see my full development timeline. Marcus agreed. He moved my meeting up to November 20th, 1 week before Derek's pitch. I spent that week preparing. Not just preparing my pitch, preparing evidence. I created a timeline document showing every major milestone in my development process with corresponding proof. First concept sketch from March 2 years ago. First line of code written in June that same year. First business owner interview in August. Every single step documented with dates and evidence. November 20th arrived, and I barely slept the night before. I kept running through everything in my head. What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I was just making accusations because I was jealous? What if Derek had somehow prepared better than I expected? I showed up 30 minutes early wearing the only suit I owned. I had bought it for a funeral 3 years ago, and it still smelled faintly like mothballs. I sat in the lobby of their office building watching people walk by in their expensive clothes carrying their expensive coffee. Everyone looked so confident, so successful. I felt like a fraud. But then I remembered my broken knuckles. I remembered the hole in my wall. I remembered 18 months of my life. And I stopped feeling like a fraud. Marcus came down to get me himself. He was younger than I expected. Maybe 35, wearing jeans and a hoodie. Silicon Valley casual. He shook my hand and smiled, and said he was excited to finally meet me in person after all those emails. We went up to the conference room. 3 other partners were waiting. Sarah Kim, the technical expert. Robert Walsh, who handled operations. And Jennifer Torres, their financial analyst. For people who controlled $20 million in venture capital. For people who were about to decide if my 18 months meant anything. I started my pitch exactly how I had practiced. But about 5 slides in, Marcus stopped me. He said they had done some preliminary research after our phone call. He said they noticed some interesting patterns. He asked me to skip ahead to my development timeline. This was it. This was the moment. I pulled up my timeline document. I walked them through everything. I showed them my notebook from March 2 years ago with the original concept sketched on page 7. I showed them the timestamp on my first GitHub commit. I showed them receipts for books I purchased. I showed them emails with business owners dated over a year ago. Sarah Kim started taking notes. A lot of notes. Then I did something I had debated all week. I told them the truth. I said I needed to disclose something important. I said the other entrepreneur they were meeting with next week was my brother. I said I had shared my complete business plan with him at a family dinner because I trusted him. I said I had given him access to all my files because he asked for them. The room got very quiet. Robert Walsh asked me if I was accusing my brother of stealing my idea. I said I was not making accusations. I was simply providing facts. I said they could draw their own conclusions. I said if Derek had independently developed the same concept, his documentation would show a similar development timeline. I said if he had genuine technical knowledge, he would be able to answer detailed questions about the architecture and algorithms. Jennifer Torres asked me why I was telling them this instead of just letting them meet with Derek and figure it out themselves. I said because I spent 18 months building something real, and I was not going to let it die because I was too polite to defend my own work. I said I was not asking them to exclude Derek from the meeting. I was just asking them to verify everything he claimed. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. He said that was exactly the kind of backbone they looked for in founders. We continued the pitch. They asked me technical questions. Deep questions. How did my algorithm handle seasonal variations? What was my plan for scaling the infrastructure? How would I address privacy concerns? What were my thoughts on competing with established players? I answered every single question. Because I had lived with this idea for 18 months. Because I had thought through every problem. Because this was mine. The meeting ran 2 hours. They asked if I could send over my code repository and my research documentation. They said they would be in touch. I left feeling exhausted, but good. Like I had done everything I possibly could. Then I waited. 7 days. 7 days of checking my email every 15 minutes. 7 days of barely eating. 7 days of imagining every possible outcome. November 27th came. Derek's meeting day. I did something I probably should not have done. I went to that coffee shop across the street from the Riverside Ventures office. I sat in the window seat. And I watched. Derek showed up 20 minutes early, just like I had. He was wearing a suit that actually fit him properly. Expensive looking. He probably bought it just for this meeting. He was carrying my Toomey briefcase. I felt sick seeing it. I watched him go inside. I ordered another coffee I did not want. I waited. 45 minutes later, Derek came out. He looked confused. Upset. He was on his phone immediately, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. His face was red. He kept running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was stressed. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Chun. He asked if I could come in right now. They were still in the building. They wanted to talk. I threw money on the table and practically ran across the street. I saw Derek getting into his car as I walked into the building. We made eye contact through the glass doors. His expression changed from confusion to understanding to something that looked like fear. I went up to the conference room. All 4 partners were there. They did not look happy. Marcus started talking. He said Derek's pitch had been interesting. Very polished presentation. Clearly a lot of work had gone into the slides. But when they started asking technical questions, things fell apart quickly. Sarah Kim jumped in. She said she asked Derek to explain how his recommendation algorithm weighted different variables. He gave a vague answer about machine learning. She asked him what specific model he was using. He said he was still exploring options. She asked him if he had any working code. He said he was in the prototyping phase. Robert Walsh said he asked Derek about his business owner interviews. Derek said he had conducted extensive research. Robert asked for specifics. Names, dates, locations. Derek said he would have to check his notes. Robert asked if he could call one of these business owners right now to verify. Derek said that would not be appropriate without giving them advance notice. Jennifer Torres said she asked to see Derek's development timeline. He showed her a document. It was dated from August this year. 3 months ago. Right after Thanksgiving. Right after I gave my presentation to my family. Then Marcus said something that made my heart stop. He said after my meeting last week, they had done something unusual. They called 2 of the business owners from my letters of intent. They verified that I had interviewed them over a year ago. They verified that I had shown them working prototypes. They verified my entire story. Then they asked Derek if he knew someone named me. My actual name. Derek apparently went pale. He admitted I was his brother. He said we had discussed similar ideas. He said it was possible some overlap had occurred. He tried to play it off like we had collaborated. That is when Sarah Kim asked him a specific technical question that only someone who actually built the algorithm would know. Something about how I handled data normalization for businesses with inconsistent record keeping. Derek had no answer. Because that problem took me 3 months to solve. Because the solution was not in my presentation. Because you only know the answer if you actually did the work. Marcus said they stopped the meeting there. They told Derek they needed time to verify some information. They said they would be in touch. Then Marcus looked at me. He said they had seen a lot of things in their years of investing, but they had never seen someone try to steal a pitch quite this blatantly. He said they wanted to invest in me, not just the standard seed round I had been asking for. They wanted to lead a Series A. $1.4 million. 40% more than my initial request. Marcus said they were increasing the amount because they had already seen how I handled pressure, betrayal, and real-world problems. He said anyone can read a book and put together a nice-looking pitch deck, but not everyone can survive 18 months of grind and still show up hungry. He said they were betting on me, not just the software. I just sat there. I actually thought I misheard him at first. I had come in ready to defend myself all over again, ready to argue my case, ready to prove this was my idea. Instead, he was telling me they wanted to fund me with more money than I had dared to write down on paper. Jennifer slid a term sheet across the table, my name on it. The company name I had come up with at 3 in the morning one night after too much coffee. The funding amount. The equity breakdown. All of it. On paper. Real. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I read through the terms. They were tough, but fair. They wanted a board seat. They wanted certain milestones hit within the first year. They wanted me full-time, no side jobs. It all made sense. It all felt serious. Marcus told me to take a day or two to think it over and have a lawyer review it. He said he did not want me to feel pressured into signing anything in the moment. But there was one more thing he needed to talk to me about. He leaned forward and asked me how I wanted them to handle Derek. For a second, I did not even understand the question. Handle him how? This was my brother. This was my family. This was not just some random guy who tried to steal a pitch. Marcus said they could blacklist him quietly. They could send an official letter to him stating their concerns about possible intellectual property issues. They could also reach out to other investors they knew and let them know what happened. Word travels fast in those circles. Or they could do nothing. Leave it alone. Let karma handle it. But he wanted to know where I stood. I sat there thinking about every family holiday where Derek had been the golden child. The smart one. The one with the better grades, the better internships, the better LinkedIn profile. I thought about how my parents always compared us without saying they were comparing us. How Derek always seemed to land on his feet while I was still trying to prove I was not a complete screw-up. I thought about the way he had hugged me on Thanksgiving and told me he believed in me while probably already planning how to use my work for himself. But then I also thought about the time he drove 3 hours in college to pick me up when my car broke down. The time he covered my share of rent 1 month when I got laid off. The time he sat with me in the hospital when I got my appendix taken out and made stupid jokes to distract me from the pain. Derek was not some cartoon villain. He was my brother who made a messed up choice. I asked Marcus a simple question. Did Derek admit what he did? Marcus said eventually, yes, when they pressed him with direct questions. When they showed him parts of my documentation timeline without telling him where it came from. When he realized he could not talk his way out of it. He admitted he had used my presentation as his base. He admitted he had accessed my files. He called it borrowing and building on shared ideas, but he admitted enough. I took a deep breath. Then another. I told Marcus I did not want some huge public takedown. I did not want them to blast Derek's name all over the investor world as some kind of warning sign. I said one thing only. I wanted Derek to have to face what he did. No shortcuts. No easy spin. Marcus nodded. He said that was fair. He said they would handle it in a way that protected their firm and my company. They were not going to work with Derek. They were going to make that very clear to him. Beyond that, he said, how I handled my relationship with my brother was up to me. We shook hands. I walked out of that office with a term sheet in my bag and a knot in my chest. The first person I called was my mom. Not to tell her about the funding. To ask if Derek was home. She sounded worried right away. She said Derek had come over earlier looking like he had been hit by a truck. He was quiet, distant, barely touched his food. He went up to his old room and shut the door. She said she did not know what was going on. I told her I was coming over. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it was. My thoughts kept bouncing between two extremes. On one side, I imagined screaming at Derek, throwing the term sheet in his face, telling him he had lost. On the other side, I imagined us talking like humans and somehow working through this. When I walked in, my mom hugged me and searched my face like she was trying to read everything at once. She asked if everything was okay. I told her I needed to talk to Derek first. He was sitting on the edge of his old bed staring at the wall when I walked in. He did not look like the confident, smooth-talking guy who had walked into that glass office building earlier. He looked small, tired, like the weight of what he had done had finally landed on him. He did not even turn around right away. He just said, "So they called you." I closed the door behind me and leaned against it. My heart was pounding. My hands were still sore from where I had punched the wall days earlier. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were red. He had been crying. "Just say it," he said. "Say whatever you came here to say." At first, nothing came out. All the speeches I had rehearsed in my head on the drive over just vanished. What came out instead was, "Why?" He looked away again. "You already know why." "No," I said. "I really don't. Because if you wanted to work on a startup, we could have talked about it. If you wanted in, you could have asked. If you thought you could help, you could have pitched that. But you didn't. You took my work and tried to pass it off as your own. Why?" He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Do you remember Dad's speech at graduation?" he said. I frowned. What does that have to do with any of this? He kept going like he had not heard me. He told everyone I was the first Morrison to graduate from a top 10 business school. He told the whole room you were the creative one, but I was the one who was going to make it. He said that right in front of you. I saw your face. I did remember that. I remembered standing there in that stupid suit, clapping for him, and feeling like I had just been wrapped up in a label I could not break out of. "Dad has always done that," Derek said. "He calls you the dreamer and me the achiever. The safe one. The one who makes the smart choices. The one who takes the stable path. But when you quit your job to build this thing, he started talking about you differently. He didn't say it to your face, but he said it to me. He said, maybe your brother actually has the guts to build something big." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "For the first time in my life, I felt like I was behind you," he said. "I know that sounds pathetic, but it messed with me. I was supposed to be the successful one. I did everything right. I got the degree. I got the consulting job. I checked every box. And suddenly you were the one with the big idea." I looked at him, trying to match this confession with the person who had walked into that investor meeting with my briefcase. "So what?" I said. "That made you think stealing my pitch was the answer?" He winced. "At first I told myself I wasn't stealing. I told myself I was taking initiative. You had this amazing concept, but no experience raising money. No connections. No track record. I thought, if I could be the one to get the funding, we could still build it together. I really did think that at first. I thought I would go in, nail the meeting, get the cash, and then bring you in like a hero move." I stared at him. "You seriously thought that was how this was going to go?" He nodded weakly. "The more I worked on the deck, the more I told myself I was improving it, adding my own spin. But every time I hit a wall on the technical side, I just copied what you had already done. I kept pushing that feeling down, that voice that said I was crossing a line. I told myself I'd make it right later." He put his head in his hands. "When they started asking those questions," he said, "I knew I was done. When they said your name, I honestly thought I was going to throw up. I realized in that moment that there was no version of this where I did not look like a complete thief. I tried to spin it, but they already knew. They had already seen your work. I could tell just by the way they looked at me." The room felt heavy. The silence between us was full of every childhood memory we shared and every new crack this had made in all of them. "So what now?" I asked. "What did they say to you after that?" He swallowed hard. "They said they were not interested in working with me. They said my behavior raised serious concerns about my integrity. They said if I went to other investors with this idea, they would make sure the full story was known." "Good," I said before I could stop myself. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, good. I deserve that." For the first time since this started, he did not try to defend himself. He did not say it was a misunderstanding. He did not try to drag me down with him. He just sat in his failure. I pulled the term sheet out of my bag and put it on the bed between us. His eyes widened when he saw the number. "They funded you," he said quietly. "Yeah," I said. 40% more than I asked for." He stared at the paper like it was written in fire. "That should have been good news. I was happy to celebrate with you," he said. "Instead, I turned myself into the villain in your story." Neither of us spoke for a while. You could hear the faint noise of the TV downstairs where my mom was pretending not to listen in. Finally, Derek looked up at me and said something I had never heard him say in his entire life. "I need help," he said. "Not with a pitch. Not with a job. With myself. I don't even fully understand why I let it get this far. I just know that this is not who I want to be. I'm going to find a therapist. Like, an actual licensed one, not some life coach on Instagram. I need to figure out why I could do this to my own brother." His voice cracked on that last word. It would have been easy to walk away right then. To tell him he was on his own. To leave him sitting on that bed and go downstairs and tell my parents everything. painting myself as the betrayed hero and him as the selfish traitor. But I thought about something Marcus had said. They were betting on me, not just the software, on how I handled problems, on who I chose to be when things got hard. So I made a choice. Get real help, I said. Actually show up. Actually do the work. Not for me. For you. Because this pattern doesn't stop with investors. If you don't fix whatever made this seem okay, you'll do it again somewhere else. He nodded. I will. I picked up the term sheet. I'm signing this, I said. With or without you in my life. This is happening. I know, he said. And you deserve every bit of it. As I reached for the doorknob, he said one more thing. If you ever decide there's a place for me in what you're building, he said softly, I'll earn it. I won't take it. I'll start from the bottom if I have to. But I get if that never happens. I did not answer. Not then. I walked out of that room carrying a piece of paper that would change my life and a weight in my chest that might take years to fully lift. But this story was not done yet. Part 4 will cover how the company grew, how my brother earned back trust step by step, and the exact moment karma finally balanced the scales in a way neither of us saw coming. The next year went by in a blur of work, tiny wins, and quiet, awkward family dinners. Supply sense grew faster than any of us expected. The coffee shops and bakeries that trusted the first buggy version stuck with us, and they brought friends. A local franchise tried it in 2 locations, then rolled it out to all 12 when they saw they were finally ordering the right amount of stock instead of guessing. We hit break even faster than the projections on my original deck. That alone felt like a miracle. Derek, on the other hand, disappeared from the shiny parts of the world he used to live in. No more photos of business class flights on his Instagram. No more crushing another quarter status updates on LinkedIn. He moved out of his high-rise apartment and into a smaller place outside the city. From what my mom told me, his life had become very simple. Therapy twice a week, contract work from home, long walks, and a lot of reading. He had gone from being the one who makes it to the brother nobody really knew what to say to. We didn't talk much. A text here and there. Saw your interview. You did great. Or, Mom said your launch went well, congrats. Surface level stuff. But there was no more edge in his messages. The ego was gone. If anything, he sounded humbled, tired, but honest. Meanwhile, Supply Sense started drawing more attention than I was ready for. A trade magazine did a feature on how one small startup was helping neighborhood businesses think like big chains. Then a podcast invited me to talk about predictive tools for mom-and-pop shops. Then a mid-level celebrity food YouTuber mentioned us in a video about how small restaurants could survive slow seasons. That last one changed everything. Within a week, our waitlist tripled. Support tickets flooded in from people wanting demos. Riverside was thrilled but kept reminding us not to scale faster than we could handle. Trust breaks faster than it builds, Marcus kept saying. We reworked our onboarding, hired 2 more engineers, and brought in a customer success person who actually liked hopping on calls with people who started with, I'm not good with computers. That was the moment a different kind of attention showed up, the kind that wears nice suits and sees everything as an asset to flip. One afternoon, Marcus called me and said a larger firm wanted to talk. Not just any firm. One of the top-tier names Derek had dreamed of working with back in his perfect LinkedIn profile days. They've been watching you, Marcus said. You're on their radar now. They're sniffing around. They might want to lead your next round. The idea of sitting across from their partners as a founder they wanted, not as the younger brother of some golden child, felt surreal. We set up the meeting. On the day of, I put on the same suit I'd worn to Riverside, except this time it actually fit a bit better. Or maybe I just filled out from eating more than instant noodles and anxiety. Either way, I walked into that glass tower with my head held higher than the last time I'd been in a place like that. The conference room was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the whole city, art on the walls that probably cost more than my entire seed round. 3 partners sat at the table, laptops open, serious faces on. We did the usual dance. Growth numbers. Churn. CAC. LTV. Pipeline. Marcus had prepped me well, but this time I wasn't just showing projections. I had real data from real customers whose names I actually knew. They were interested. You could feel it. They started jumping from polite questions to sharp ones. Why haven't the bigger inventory platforms crushed you yet? What's stopping someone from copying your model? How sticky is your product really? If a competitor undercuts you, do they leave? I answered honestly. The bigger players don't care enough about the tiny guys to build what we're building. They sell big packages to chains. Mom and pop shops are an afterthought. Someone can copy how it looks from the outside, but they can't copy the relationships or the disgusting amount of edge case logic we've built into the engine. Our customers stick because our product doesn't treat them like they're dumb. We listen, we adjust fast, and we don't try to upsell them stuff they don't need. They nodded, taking notes. Then one of them, a tall guy with graying hair and the kind of voice people listen to out of habit, asked a question that shifted the whole energy. I have to ask, he said. Is there any legal or relational baggage we need to know about? Anyone out there who might claim this idea, this product, or this pitch as their own? He didn't blink when he said it. He knew exactly what he was referring to. Riverside had shared the basics of the brother situation under NDA. Of course they had. It was a risk factor. I didn't flinch. Yes, I said. You're talking about my older brother. The room went quiet. So I laid it out. Calm. Clean. No drama. I told them how I spent 18 months building, testing, and documenting. How I shared the entire thing with my family at Thanksgiving. How Derek took my deck, my files, and my story and tried to pitch it 3 weeks before me. How Riverside saw right through him. How they called each of us in, checked timelines, grilled us with questions, and made their call. One of the reasons Riverside and I trust each other, I said, is because we went through that fire at the very start. Nothing about this is fuzzy or unclear. We don't have a maybe he helped a little bit gray zone. I have the code, the timestamps, the interviews, the receipts. And more than that, I have the understanding. Ask me anything about any part of this product, and I can go all the way down. Nobody else can do that because nobody else lived it. The gray-haired partner looked at me for a long moment, then gave a small nod. We had to hear you say that out loud, he said. They wrapped the meeting by saying they'd follow up. It was a good meeting. You can feel the difference between thanks for your time and we're already thinking about how to structure this. On the way out, as I waited for the elevator, I saw a familiar logo on one of the office doors down the hall. It was Derek's old consulting firm. For a second, my brain did that weird slow-motion thing. I stared at the logo, remembering how proud Derek had been the day he joined them, how he'd sent the family a photo of his nameplate like it was a trophy. I almost kept walking. Then something made me take a slow breath, walk over, and ask the receptionist if Derek still worked there. She looked at her screen, then shook her head. No, he's not here anymore, she said. He left last year. I nodded, thanked her, and walked back to the elevator. That night, I had dinner at my parents' place. Small talk. The usual questions about whether I was sleeping enough, my mom pushing too much food onto my plate. Derek showed up late, hair a little longer, wearing a simple shirt and jeans instead of the perfect business outfit he used to live in. He hugged my mom, nodded at my dad, then looked at me. Can we talk later? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said. We should. After dessert, we ended up outside on the back porch, the same spot where we used to sit as kids and talk about the future like it was some movie we'd both star in. He leaned on the railing, looking at the dark yard. I heard who you met with today, he said. It's all over the partners group chat from my old firm. This scrappy little inventory startup is getting courted by the big guys. You're a topic now. There was no jealousy in his voice, just this strange mix of pride and something like regret. You know what the funny part is? He said. 2 years ago, if they'd called me into a room and said, we want you to advise a company like yours, I would have walked in like I owned the place. Now I read their messages and I just think, I'm glad they're talking about you and not me. We stood there in silence for a moment. I went back through all my old emails, he said. From that time, all the lies I told myself, the way I framed things so I could look at myself in the mirror. It's disgusting, man. I still don't fully understand how I convinced myself any of it was okay. That's what ego does, I said. It writes fanfiction about your life and then calls it truth. He laughed once, short and rough. Therapist says the same thing, just with more bills attached, he said. Then he turned to face me fully. I've been thinking about something for a while, he said, and I want to say it clean, without making it about guilt or pity or some dramatic gesture. Okay, I said. You built something real, he said. From scratch. With no safety net. No firm behind you. No fancy brand name. Just you, your stupid stubbornness, and a ridiculous number of notebooks. I tried to shortcut that. I tried to skip the part where you actually earn what you have. And the universe kicked my legs out from under me in front of the exact people I most wanted to impress. He shook his head. That's karma, he said. Plain and simple. I walked into that investor room wearing your work like a costume, and they stripped it off me in under an hour. I'm still living with that. Every time I send a resume now, every time someone asks why I left the firm, I have to decide how honest I'm going to be. That's my everyday sentence. He took a breath. But here's the other side of it, he said. If you ever, and I mean ever, decide you want someone to help make your work louder, more visible, more understood by people who don't speak your language, I want a shot at earning that place. Not as your savior, not as your connection, just as a guy who knows he messed up worse than most people ever will and wants to build something honest for once. I looked at him for a long time. He wasn't selling. He wasn't charming. He wasn't spinning. He looked like someone who'd been stripped down to the studs and was now trying to rebuild himself with better materials. You know what's funny? I said, Riverside keeps asking when I'm going to bring on a proper marketing director. Someone who can translate what we're doing into language normal people care about. He smiled a little. That's literally what I used to get paid for. Yeah, I said. I know. We let that sit between us. The idea, the risk, the history. Here's the deal, I said finally. I'm not handing you a title because we share DNA. If you come in, you start on a contract, 3 months. No fancy role, no C-level anything. You work under the head of growth we just hired. You earn trust from the team, not from our last name. And you don't touch anything strategic without me seeing it first. You okay with that? He nodded immediately. More than okay. That's more than I deserve, honestly. One more thing, I said. If you so much as blur the truth in one email, one pitch, one piece of content, you're out. No second conversation. No, but I meant well. Gone. He didn't flinch. I want that in writing, he said. Put it in my contract. Make it official. That answer told me more than anything else. 3 months later, Derek sat at one of our desks in the noisy office above the laundromat. Not as my brother, not as the guy who stole my idea, but as the new guy in marketing who's on probation. The team was cautious at first. They knew the broad strokes of what had happened. I had told them I believed in second chances, but I was also not going to sugarcoat the past. If you're not comfortable working with him, tell me, I had said. I'd rather lose a hire than lose your trust. But Derek didn't come in acting like he was special. He made coffee. He took notes. He asked questions that didn't center himself. He sat with Monica and listened to hours of user interviews so he could understand the customers, not just the numbers. He earned small wins. A blog post he wrote about why your gut is stressed about inventory and why it's not your fault got shared in 3 small business Facebook groups. A simple landing page he redesigned doubled our sign-up rate. He suggested a series of case studies featuring our early customers where they were the heroes and the product was just the sidekick tool. Our users loved it. It felt honest, relatable, not like generic startup fluff. One afternoon, Priya walked over to my desk and said, Okay, I hate to admit it, but your brother's actually good at this. I know, I said. That was part of the problem. She smirked. Well, at least now he's using it on our side. Month 3 came. We sat in a tiny meeting room with Derek's contract on the table. I had a simple choice: extend, promote, or cut. He slid a folder across to me before I could say anything. What's this? I asked. A letter, he said. To you. To the board. To Riverside. Laying out exactly what I did back then. No filters. No soft language. I want it on record. Part of the company's history. If anyone ever digs into our early days, I want them to see that we didn't hide the uglier parts. I opened the folder and read. He didn't hold back. He wrote about the greed, the fear, the need to win at any cost. How he walked into that room wearing my work and walked out feeling naked. How Riverside's partners looked at him like a case study in what not to do. He ended it with, if you decide I don't belong here, I'll accept it. If you decide I do, I'll spend every day proving you weren't wrong to give me a second chance. I finished the letter and sat back. This is going in our internal story archive, I said. Founders screw up in private all the time and pretend everything was clean. I'd rather be the company that says, here's where we messed up and what we did about it. He nodded. That's the only way this means anything. I slid a different paper across the table. His updated contract. Marketing director, he read. Not CMO? Not yet, I said. Titles are cheap. Trust is expensive. He smiled. I'll take it. Years later, when SupplySense was big enough to be on conference stages and panel discussions, people loved hearing the founder-brother betrayal story. Everyone leaned in at the part where Derek tried to steal the pitch. Everyone wanted the messy details of how he got caught. What they didn't expect, and what hit them harder, was the part where he ended up on my team, not as some magical redemption arc, but under tight guardrails, earning back trust one small, boring, consistent action at a time. Karma had already hit him where it hurt. He lost his shot with the big investment crowd he used to worship. His firm knew his worst professional moment in detail. The people he used to impress knew the truth. When it mattered most, he tried to cut corners instead of doing the work. That stain didn't wash out. Even when he started appearing as our marketing director in public, that story was always there. Every time he talked to a founder about messaging, he knew they'd probably heard the rumor. Every time he stood by my side during a pitch, he knew exactly why I was the one presenting the product, and he was the one waiting for the Q&A. His repayment was living in the shadow of the thing he tried to steal, helping it grow, knowing it would never be his. And weirdly, that's what healed things. Because while karma hit him hard, it also gave him a way to carry it. Not by pretending it never happened, but by working every day in the exact field where he'd fallen, this time with both hands open and no stolen notes in his bag. As for me, I got what I actually wanted from the start. A real company built on real work, backed by people who had seen me at my worst and still chose to bet on me. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't some dramatic courtroom scene or public cancellation. It was quiet and steady. He tried to steal my future and ended up helping build it on my terms. Watch the next video.